Why do we need this in Crimea when we have our own peninsulas to develop? Invaders from the Russian army are now serving in the Ukrainian army? Yes, that's right. Russia is a masquerade. We live badly, and on TV they show it quite differently. In the center of Chita City, there's an area where people take a dump simply in a wooden toilet, and then in the spring it all melts. They walk on shit, you could say. I realize that peaceful protest leads nowhere. I've been in Moscow 3 times, and there I was called a churka, a narrow-eyed, anyone but a citizen of the Russian Federation. Are you ready to shoot your fellow citizens? Yes. They are collaborators, fascists, man-curds, who obey only money and their master Putin. Units of the Russian volunteer soldiers are fighting as part of the AFU. One of them is the Siberian Battalion, which consists of Buryats, Tuvinians, Yakuts, and other nationalities of the Russian Federation. In this video, they will talk about Kremlin propaganda, how life in Russia really is, and why they decided to fight on the side of Ukraine. I come from the Republic of Buryatia, Ulanud City. I lived there until I was 17 years old. I also lived in the Far East and lived some part of my life in Moscow. Ethnically, on my father's side, I am a Tatar. I was born in a village in Yakutia. I do not consider myself a Russian, as this state is an enemy for me. The Yakuts who took up arms and came here to Ukraine are neither heroes nor soldiers. They are just killers, beasts who came to kill and rape for money and for Putin. We ourselves allow Putin to come to this and to stay in power for so many years. My call sign is Buryat. I am a member of the Siberian Battalion of the International Legion of the AFU. I was born and grew up in the city of Ulanud. In the history book of Russia, it is written that Buryatia and the rest of the national republics were voluntarily annexed. In fact, this is not true. I studied to be a historian myself, and when I looked up the archives, I learned about the history of Buryatia and how it was colonized, how whole tribes and whole cities were destroyed, when nomads were simply taken away from their cattle, forced to learn Russian, completely assimilated in order to destroy the Buryat language. After the war started, many people became interested in who they were, where they came from, what their lineage was, what tribe of Buryats they were from. Since the region is poor, we have 4 ways: to go to the police, to the army, to work on a rotational basis, or to go to another country like South Korea or America and earn money there. That is, you cannot earn such money in the republic itself to feed your family. When the war started, I took it to mean, why do we need it? For what? For what purposes? I was just horrified at what crimes Russia was committing, and what crimes the Russians themselves, including my people, were committing. I was ashamed of it. Did not want to be involved in any way. So I packed up and left, so that at least my taxes, my money, would not go to support this war. I decided to come here and help, just so that when I look at myself in the mirror, I could say I did something. I did not support this criminal war, but helped Ukraine. I'm very ashamed because I believe that every Russian who is currently there and abroad is involved in this. Having lived all my life in Russia, I felt the oppression of the peoples of Siberia. That people live unfairly, and that all the money goes only to Moscow and is stolen there. And in fact, the rich regions live very poorly. I've been an opponent of this Putin regime since I was very young. I dodged the army because I did not want to serve this regime. I was wanted, so I could not often participate in rallies. Invaders from the Russian army are now serving in the Ukrainian army? Yes, that's right. What's your educational background? I studied international relations. The Kremlin criminally seized territory, staged a coup, bribed people. In fact, this territory never belonged to Russia. Let's go backwards. If they wanted to save the people, as they say, they would have just taken them to Russian territory, give them apartments. That's all. Because the money they spent on military actions was much more than just giving everyone an apartment. So it's all lies. It's all propaganda. I left in September, after the mobilization started. That is, I could have gone to jail, and I could not have been engaged in the activities I'm engaged in now. After the beginning of the full-scale war, being in a third country, I looked for different ways out, including the AFU, to get here. And I contacted the Siberian Battalion in a Telegram channel. Already together, we'd worked out a way to enter Ukraine. I'm omitting details for security reasons, so that our fighters can get there safely. And what did you work in Yakuts? An archaeologist who studies water bodies. And in Yakutia, all the rivers are very polluted. And the fish there suffer a lot. But they're mostly fine, ordinary people who catch one sturgeon. But the authorities themselves massively destroy fish. After the beginning of the full-scale war, my mother fell ill and was taken to the hospital, where she died because of medical negligence. Why did you decide to come and defend Ukraine with weapons in your hands? First of all, because of my mom. And secondly, to stop this chaos that the Kremlin has organized all over the world. After the forced partial mobilization, I went to Mongolia, then to Turkey, and then I got to Ukraine. Today we are enemies for Ukraine, no matter how you look at it, because we are from the aggressor country. And to show that not all of us are, it is only necessary to prove with blood that we are for you. When there was an annexation of Crimea, simply occupation, before that, having visited the Kamchatka Peninsula, I immediately said, why do we need this Crimea if we have our own peninsulas? Why should we be developed? And there I saw how poor people live in such a region. Already 50 kilometers away from Moscow, you will see the real Russia, how it lives. Everything is being destroyed. We live on subsidies, although the Republic of Buryats is very rich. We have jade, gold, baikal, forest, all this belongs to Moscow. And then we wait for a handout from them. What are your salaries, by the way? Rostat says 60 to 70,000 rubles, but in reality, it can be 20 to 30 a month. In Siberia, it's a very small salary. At the exchange rate, it's $250. Yes. At the same time, our winters are cold, and firewood is expensive, and we don't have gas. Although gas goes around Baikal from below and above, but everything goes to China for sale. Just imagine how a pensioner with wood heating can survive when his pension is 6,000 rubles, and our winters last half a year. I already told myself that I will not return to this kind of Russia. In some Siberian cities, even in the capitals, the toilet is still outside. Can you imagine? In the city of Chita, there is a district in the downtown where there are two-story wooden barracks, and people just go to the wooden toilet. And then when it all melts in the spring, they walk on shit, you could say. I realized that peaceful protests get you nowhere. Throughout my life, I see that the authorities do not change. On the contrary, the regime's nuts are being tightened all the time. Even now we see that the Russian opposition is not consolidated. I believe that we need to unite, first of all, to defend Ukraine, and then we will see. Because I think that a person, if he wants to defend his independence, he should defend it now with weapons. I showed this footage to all at the moment I was in Moscow, and I said, how can you not see this atrocity? What this regime is doing? People were saying that it's just staged, specially made footage. This is propaganda. During the Nazi Germany years, when the regime fell, the American commanders gathered German businessmen and took them to one of the concentration camps and showed them the mountains of dead bodies, gas chambers. To which these Germans replied that this was Hollywood. Very strong propaganda from the Kremlin. And unfortunately, dissent is forbidden in our country. They've closed all free media. Self-education has fallen. People's humanity has been killed. As it is shown by the Russian media, Ivan, a good Russian, never kills civilians, never loots anything. But the other nationalities, for example, Buryats, Tuvinians, Altians, Kalmucks, they're just savages. They've been to Moscow 3 times, and I was called a churka, narrow-eyed, whatever you want, but not a citizen of the Russian Federation. Constant unreasonable checking of documents by the police, and humiliation and insult. What is the attitudes towards you in Ukraine? Not once has it ever happened. Not once at all. This current regime in Russia reminds me of the former German fascist Reichstag. Russia has Z symbols everywhere, just as the Germans had swastikas. And children are trained in the Janarmia, on the model of Hitler-Jugend. I'll show you some pictures from Bucha. Look, these are unarmed civilians. Yes, I saw that. Killed, raped. And what was the reason for this brutality? This cruelty is manifested because the people of Russia are rotten from the inside because of poverty. They'd sell their mothers for money. That's why all sorts of scum of society, perverts, sadists, fascists, who create inhumanity and do these horrors, come here. At home in Russia, you've had tried to communicate your position with your relatives, friends, colleagues. Many are afraid, you could say, and many more support this chaos. Everyone knows, but they keep quiet or support the regime. We live badly, but on TV they show something completely different. It's disgusting and sickening to even watch it. I'm honored to be in Ukraine, as Ukrainians are proud and brave people who are fighting back against the onslaught of the big world fascist evil of the Russian Federation. If a region of Russia wants to secede, it has every right to self-determination. I believe that we need absolute decentralization of power, and this is how we can build our future. Now I want to help Ukraine in any way I can. That is, to learn how to use weapons as well, to get other skills in order to use them later on the territory of Russia. How long are you ready to be at the front? Until the victory of Ukraine. I'd like to be a sniper and take out some more of these subhumans. Are you ready to shoot your fellow citizens? Yes. They're collaborators, fascists, mankirts who obey only money and their master Putin. Evil which in Russia dwells since ancient times. It is necessary simply to destroy, that never there were wars and that the peace has come. I only think with the victory of Ukraine we have a future. I'm in favor of self-determination of peoples. How they should live, for their culture, what language to speak, and what laws to make. I'm in favor of full independence for a Russian national republic. I don't know what to say to the Russians. I would appeal to my Buryats. If you are already in this war, surrender. It is better to wait out this war in captivity than to rot in a foreign land. This is a criminal war. You will become international war criminals, and you will